Hello and welcome to my feed. This is my first Twitch stream, so don't expect me to be a pro at any of this. I don't have any of the bells and whistles, literally. But for this one, I figured I would start out by showing something I'm actually trying to do at work, which is I'm trying to deal with a flaky API server. So if I have an API server that has failed requests or whatever, maybe just retry the request until it succeeds. That's kind of the situation we're dealing with. Maybe you have a flaky internet connection where you do have connectivity, but your requests are failing because of packet loss or whatever, or maybe the API servers are restarting or whatever it might be. Let's see, why is my webcam all messed up? Huh. What if I restart my webcam? Let's see. No. That is not working. Huh. That is a bummer. What about this one? Well, you can see me there. And maybe you can see me here. Okay, cool. Got it working. Sorry about that. Like I said, first stream. Anyway, forgot the introduction. My name is Jess Chadwick. I've been a web developer for 20 plus years. And in this channel, I'm planning on talking about mostly web development stuff, mostly front-end browser type stuff. Right now I'm doing mostly React, MobX, things like that. So that's probably what a lot of this content will be. I wanted to mix it up a little bit and kind of have two different things that I'm going to be streaming, generally speaking. One, like I'm going to be doing today, is just basically like learn with me kind of stuff. You know, like this is something I'm trying to actually figure out, and I'll go through the process of figuring it out, and I'll just record it and share it with you, and get your feedback. You know, so join, pitch in, give me some recommendations of where I should go, what I should do, and help me learn, help me help you, and help me and help me help you. How about that? The other kind of scenario is I also want to kind of give some of my pre-canned talks. So I do a lot of user presentations, user group presentations, and stuff. So I wanted to kind of throw those out there as well. And so I'll be recording those from time to time as well. So yeah. I also have on my stream, I've got my follower tracker. Since this is a brand new stream, this is a brand new channel, I'm trying to get some followers. I have one follower. Rich Ross is my first follower. Thanks, buddy. And so my goal right now is just 10. I'm looking for 10 double-digit followers. And I set my goal for 4 days. I don't know what 4 days. 4 days is, I guess, by the end of the month, right? So I think I can do that. So please follow if you're interested, and tell your friends and get them to follow too. All right, so let's dive into it. So what we're looking at here is I've got a React application. I think a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be doing here is going to be kind of in React, but I don't think React really matters for this one because ultimately what's happening here is I've got this contact service, right? So when I'm saving my information, it's going through this contact service. It implements this RESTful service. And this RESTful service, I'm not going to get into it too deeply, but basically it's a wrapper over on top of fetch, right? So I just have kind of get, put, post, delete, which just is a wrapper around basic fetch API calls. So if you're familiar with the fetch API, then this should be familiar to you. If not, check out the Fetch API. It's pretty awesome. It is available in pretty much any modern browser these days, and so it's definitely a great alternative to jQuery or the Angular, Ajax APIs, or whatever you might have used in the past. Now, I also have, because the applications that I'm creating, the applications that I'm creating this for also have jQuery Ajax calls in them. And so in this contact service, my create method actually uses jQuery Ajax to create the contact. What's the contact app? The contact app is over here. I've got two things. I got a test page, which just basically allows me to make raw requests. I'll do that later. And then I got my contacts page. So what's happening here is that it's supposed to load up and call my API. This make a get request and call my API here. And it's, well, right now it's it's not working because my server is not running. Let me start my server. Hold on. Okay. So anyway, what it did show is the application kind of fails gracefully, right? It shows an error message, gives you the retry button. You can retry the request again. Now that my server's up, yeah. Okay. So now that my server's up, you can see it failed because I introduced something called the Chaos Monkey. So let me show you my service real quick. This is the back-end service, just a basic REST API, get, put, post, delete on contacts, right? I got an autocomplete thing here. But basic stuff, just basically save it. It's nothing special. I just got an in-memory list of contacts, which I'm actually pulling in from here. I got a JSON thing, right? So this is just supposed to be a stupid demo local server. So when I start it up, it loads all those contacts, so I have something ready. And then I introduce something called the Chaos Monkey. Chaos Monkey just says, where is it? Open it up. Chaos Monkey is some middleware, basically just blows up every once in a while. There's two ways you can blow up. I've got this thing called the request queue that whenever you come in, it checks and sees if we have one in the request queue, or actually if we don't have one. So basically, if this is the first call, all right, if this is the first call, then go ahead and introduce a little anarchy, a little reference to the Dark Knight there, Joker. You can also pass in the chaos query string, and pass in the status code that you want the Chaos Monkey to return with. So basically, this is chaos on demand, right? So random chaos, random is the first request to every URL, or if you explicitly ask it, explicit chaos. In that case, it goes through, clears the queue, just so the next one will actually work. In other words, this won't be true and it won't introduce it. So if we're introducing a little anarchy, if we're introducing chaos, then just set the status to either the code that was requested or 500 and scream that it's the Chaos Monkey doing it. And also make the call take a little bit longer, make it take 2 seconds. I don't really know why I did that, just to be a little more obnoxious, I guess. Otherwise, just pass through, and I'm introducing a network delay. Since this is a local service, I'm just introducing a delay here just to kind of mimic some network latency. And that's it, right? So that's what you see here. The Chaos Monkey failed, made the first call fail. So now when I retry, it should load just fine, right? So the second one worked just fine. Now when I click on that, that'll fail. If I click on it again, it'll work. Click on this first one, it'll fail. Click on it again, it'll work. That kind of thing, right? I can also add, so those are all fetch calls, right? Using my contact service, I was getting contacts, getting all of them, and then getting individual contact are the first, the two examples that I just showed. So then when I add a contact, that's the one that's going to call this Ajax request. So let's just add a contact, test user, test.com, sure. Now save those changes. So this should fail, right? I got a little pop-up here, Chaos Monkey. So this was a post, and that one went through this one, this jQuery Ajax call, right? So now I've got two ways to interact with my service: the Chaos Monkey, or the jQuery Ajax, and fetch calls. And so what I'm looking to do here is I'm looking to basically just retry, right? So even though it's called the Chaos Monkey, it is pretty predictable. Like, I know that the first one's going to fail and the second one's going to succeed always. It's good enough for my test right now. But I think the real scenario that I'm looking for is just random calls will fail. You know, like 200 calls will work and then one will fail. Or maybe a bunch will fail in a row, right? Maybe the first, second, third one will fail because you actually kind of lost connectivity for a little bit. But, you know, you want to keep on trying. So that's what we're looking at. So let's get into it. So I actually cheated. I did a little bit of research beforehand. But let's pretend that I didn't and kind of go through the process. So the first thing I looked for was retry Ajax requests. All right, what's the best way to retry an Ajax request? Let's see. So I've done this kind of thing before, right? So unsurprisingly, the first Stack Overflow answer is going to be something to do with jQuery because everybody uses jQuery. And that's fine because I do want to know what to do with jQuery. And so I'm not really sure. Yeah, there's a retry Ajax plugin and whatnot that they've set here. They're adding some special info to this one and a custom error handler. But this is specific to a call, right? I want it to kind of happen transparently. So the first thing that I'm trying to address right now is basically a retry. Whenever any Ajax call fails, just retry it again. We'll get into how many times to retry or whatever. But for right now, let's just try and retry it again one more time. And I don't want to have to do any of this on each individual Ajax call. Now I do know that jQuery has a way to extend. Yeah, right. So here, if I scroll down, I can actually extend the jQuery Ajax call to kind of register a handler, right? So whenever it fails, call this code. So that's cool. So I'll keep that in my back pocket. I don't really want to do that just yet because ideally I want to have something that works for both jQuery and Fetch. So let's retry failed Fetch calls. Yeah. So now let's just click on some random blog post that looks good. Okay, so he's jumping right into, I assume it's a he, Jason. He's jumping right into some background. Oh, it's async. What is Fetch-Retry? Fetch keeps going. All right, let's get to the meat of where he actually registers this. So I'm less concerned about how to retry because that's kind of obvious. I mean, it's the simplest part. We can deal with that later. I'm more concerned about like where am I going to register all of the failed requests. So if I look through this guy, redundant function, what's he saying? He's talking about ES7 in a conclusion. All right, so I don't see anywhere where he's actually like registering this globally. So this looks like another kind of more generic way to handle a fetch, but you're going to actually call this function. That's not what I want. I want to be able to listen to any Ajax requests or any fetch requests and retry them. Now, I mentioned earlier I cheated a little bit. This is actually going to be the library that I'm going to end up using. So this library it retries fetch calls. Basically, you instead of importing fetch and using fetch directly, you import it from here, which wraps fetch, right? And so the API is the same, but it adds a couple of different options where you can kind of give the retry count and the retry delay. So that's a little bit of the future. But again, we still need to figure out retry failed Ajax requests fetch. We still need to figure out how to actually register and hear about all of the Ajax failures, the request failures. Now, let's see. This just kind of talks, yeah. Once again, I'm going to kind of take advantage of the fact that I did some homework, and I'm going to type in service workers. So if you're not familiar with service workers are relatively new. They're not super new. They're very available. Let's see. So service workers, can I use Edge 17? You can't use an IE. I don't care. I don't support IE. But way back to Firefox 44, Chrome 45. Yeah, so we got pretty good support, and all the modern browsers, the evergreen browsers, support this. So we got 92% of the global, or 92.8% of the global browsers use this, but 100% of my users, of my applications, fall into this category of supported browsers. So my solution is going to involve a service worker. So service workers are a place where you can capture and even intercept and change any of the network requests that go out. So traditionally, you'll use service workers to do things like cache requests, mostly for like a PWA, a progressive web application, an offline application that's actually built to be offline. So, the first time you load it up from the internet, obviously you're online the first time, you download all of your assets locally. Now that's usually focused on static assets like the JavaScript and the HTML that actually run your site. We're focused on dynamic assets, stuff that we're retrieving from a REST API, from some API. But we can, the reason I'm bringing service workers into it is, even though they are used for caching of static assets usually, that's the place where you can watch and intercept all of the Ajax requests that go out. And so I'm trying to find it again, but there was some article, service workers capture all requests. There was some article that, a blog post that actually told me, I don't see it now. Service worker capture all requests, let's say jQuery fetch. So basically I want to catch both jQuery and fetch. Was it this one? There was a blog post that actually told me that even when you use, in modern browsers today, even when you use the $Ajax, or which is just a wrapper over XMLHTTPRequest, which is the thing that's been around for decades, I think now. Even when you use that, when you use Ajax, the jQuery Ajax or XMLHTTPRequest, it ultimately, in modern browsers, ends up being a fetch call underneath. And so in your service worker, you can actually just look at all fetch calls. That's what you're looking at. And so that's why when I jump to the end of this logical conclusion here, that's why we're going to end up using this Fetch-Retry library, because it's going to help us wrap fetch, because ultimately we're dealing with fetch calls here. And so now how do I do this, right? So if I go back to my application, I am using Create React App, which is a template for React applications, which wires up a bunch of stuff for you by default. If I minimize all this. If I go back to my index, right, this is the entry point of my application. This is what loads up. You can see that it has already wired up service workers for me. So there's a handful of things that it's done. But basically, it generates this file from service worker, right? Let me load both of these. So this, I didn't write any of this. This was all generated for me from Create React application. So the idea here is they give you a lot of boilerplate to work off of. And if you just kind of scroll real quickly through this, a lot of this, or pretty much all of it right now, is very much focused on the scenario that I talked about earlier, that offline scenario of PWAs and caching your static your static stuff for your application, so that your application can work offline. So even though this is specific to that, it does not solve our problem, right? It doesn't allow us to kind of look at those network requests. So, but it does allow us to add our own logic in here. So if we look at this, right? So the first thing is add an event listener, and they see if you are using your service worker, if you have a custom service worker file. So in create React app, this public URL is refers to this public folder over here. So ideally, I would like to create this in TypeScript, but for right now, I'm not going to mess with TypeScript in the public folder. I'm just going to write the JavaScript here. Supposedly, just by the nature of this existing, this file existing, this code should pick it up and download it. Now, it will not work if, I think by default, this ignores some things if you're in your local development. Let's just see if this works. I think that this will not work because we're running on localhost or whatever, but let's just see real quick. So I added that file, and I also need to go back to my index and say register, right? If you want your app to work offline, you can change unregistered to register. So register, and then go back to my application here. Is my application running? Let's see. Nope, just my server is running. So let me start my client. Start Webpack and everything. And go ahead and refresh over here. Cool, okay. So now that's running, and I do not see that, let's do everything. All right, I do not see that console log line in my output, but, and I don't think it downloaded it either. Yeah, okay. So like I said, it's to be expected because it will only run it if you are in, there you go. So the first line of register is if you're in production mode, if you're in production mode, go ahead and register this. So I am gonna just comment this out. I'm gonna remove this. Now it says, if you support service workers, then go ahead and register it. There you go. All right, so now it downloaded it. I should see this. Yep, there we go. It's not actually running it though. Let's look at my application. Service workers, that's cool. Let me go ahead and clear storage. Maybe I had something to do from before. What if I do info? Service worker JS. It's downloading, but it's not executing. That's interesting. Service worker JS. Huh. Well, you know what? I think that there's some output issue here. I think this might be transpiled. So let me do this. Let me say service worker. Let's say retry fetch requests. I'll go ahead and make this special purpose. All right, so we'll go and change this to retry fetch requests. Loaded service worker. All right, cool. Right. So yeah, I think there was just some issue with this was getting transpiled into that, or I don't know, something. I don't know. But change the name, shows up, right? So I got my message there, which means that it's working. Cool. So sorry, I was trying to get rid of those things. All right. So we're all good here. Now let me Google the other thing that I was looking at. So now I'm able to look at all fetch requests, but I don't really know how to do that. Service workers, let's just say service workers retry fetch request. Let's try to open that one for a second. Ooh, here we go. Here we go. This looks good. This looks good. This looks good. No, this just tells how to do it. I need to I need to find in the service worker, how do I get access to the failed request? Service worker. Let's say service workers failed fetch request. Let's search for that. Okay. So I'm just trying to figure out how to, what is the API for, I think it's like in the window, add service worker, listen for failed fetch request. What about this guy, Rich Harris? Understanding service workers, immediately failing. How do I? Okay. Yep, this code looks familiar. Okay, yeah, all right, so there is a, yep, event listener. All right, there we go, let's Google that. Fetch, oops, fetch event listener. This, I think, is what we want. Okay, fetch event, here we go, cool. There we go, all right. This is the event type for fetch events dispatched on the service worker global scope, right? So now in my service worker, I have a global scope and I can listen for these fetch events. Here's an example. All right, add event listener event, and so this is the event. So now the event is the fetch. What's the event? Fetch event. Fetch event. What is on the event? What? Where's the API for this? The request. Yeah. Okay. And it contains information about including the request and how the receiver will treat the response. So anyway, this is the place where we can, okay, here's all the properties. I'm sorry, I just scrolled right by them. All right, the response, yeah, the request. So right, here's that raw request that we have. Respond with, all right, so we can override the browser's default fetch handling. Cool. All right, but now, just to kind of prove that this works, let's start slowly and just listen to this event and capture that event and do something with it. Let's just log it out. So now I forget, I don't think this is right. So service worker, maybe it is. Let's just try it and see what happens. All right, so what was this? This was the event. Yep, the event. Okay. Oops. All right. Now console.log event what? Let's just say debugger so we can grab it. Okay. Cool. So now unexpected use of self. What? Okay. Well, it's my ESLint. Let's just disable ESLint here because we're breaking all the rules. No, we're in debug mode, so that's fine. Cool. So I just refreshed the page and my debugger hit. So let's look at this event. So we got event. The event should have that request in it. Yep, there's that request. Cool. Request. Target. Okay. Timestamp. Type fetch. Got a lot of information in here that we can use. All right. So there's the actual fetch request. The request is, I believe this is what you would just pass to the fetch API. So I should be able to capture this object and kind of like save it in memory. And if it fails, then I should be able to retry it here, right? So now how do I find out that it fails? All right, so now I've seen it, but more importantly, how do I get to, let's see, event, request, what was it, URL? Event request URL. Yeah, is that the only place I have the URL? I think it is. All right, event request URL. So now let's do console.log. Oops, fetch event request URL, I believe was lowercase. Event request URL. Yep, cool. All right, so now save that, it'll reload. Now for every Ajax request that happens, we should see a log here. What's going on? I don't think it liked that I restarted in the middle of a debugger. Let me open up a new window. There we go. Cool. All right. Now here we go. All right. So what we are looking for in here, just to prove that we are getting both jQuery, Ajax, and fetch request, is I should see, so I see all my fetch requests, right? But here, this is what I was also talking about earlier. Every single fetch request, every request for Ajax files, so even these are all requests from my page here, right? So this is the index.html. Pulling down jQuery, that's where I put that in here, right? So every fetch request, every time you're actually requesting something over the internet, it goes through this surface worker listener. And so even if it's like a script tag, right? Even if you're not doing it from code. So that's cool. So this proves that. So now we need to prove that we are also catching jQuery requests. Do we see a post there? Create? Well, yeah, I didn't see the method here, but we did see, let's see. Let me update this, the handler here. What was that? That was event.request. I think it was method. Yeah, so let's do that. Go back to our console. Get. All right, cool. So now we should see. I don't care. Post. There you go. So there's my fetch, right? So that's an Ajax request. It failed. Post. Cool. So now we know we have the right kind of entry point here. We have the right entry point to figure out what's going on. So now we have to react to it. So now what do? We can react to this. So how do we? Okay, let's just Google this some more. Service worker. Let's jump back to our browser here. Service worker failed fetch request. So I'm just going to kind of click around and see if I have any code to respond with. Okay, this actually makes the call and then listens for it. Okay, yeah, this is probably something that I'm going to be, the approach that I'm going to be going on with. But I mean, they're the original poster on Stack Overflow, so I probably don't want to copy and paste them. What is all this? Let's see. I'm trying to find. What does it say? Service worker. Let's say retry failed fetch request. So this is cool. Now I can limit my searches just to fetch, right? Because I know that I'm always dealing with the fetch API right now. Covering from fetch failures with a service worker. Let's see. Cool. Event.respond with. So right, so this is using that event and overriding. What is something? Oh, you can listen to fetch error. No? Oh, these are all proposals. I'm in the whatc thing, but I can look at this conversation. Yeah, I don't know. This isn't. I want to know from. They're trying to bake that into the actual spec. All right. So here's that fetch retry. I'm assuming I want to do something like respond with in here. JavaScript fetch retry on failure. Okay, cool. Yeah, this is that original post that we first saw. And he just talks about the actual retry. So this is cool. I mean, this is what I'm going to end up using, like I said. Actually, I'm just going to end up using this. I'm trying now to figure out how to wire it up. So I want to do, I guess I want to do respond with, event.respond with. Let's Google this. Let's Google service. Actually, no, let's not leave this. This is a good page. Service worker fetch respond with. So how do we override? Yes, of course. We're going back to NDN. All right, show me an example. Async function. Try to get the response from a cache. All right, so this is. Okay, so all of these are just overriding and just calling fetch and passing the request through. So that's cool. So that means I should just be able to do this and merge my request with this. So I think let's go back. I think I have already brought in the fetch retry. The fetch retry node module. Let me look at my packages, my package JSON. No, yes, I did. Yeah. So like I said, I had done some research beforehand. So I already installed the fetch retry package, so it's in there. This package is not going to be available in this untranspiled stuff. So let's give up on this and do it right. Let's have, let me move here. Let me rename to service worker retry failed requests. It's a long name, but you know, it is what it is. Oops, I wanted to also change that to TS. I'm TypeScript now. Cool. We're still, yeah, we're gonna have to deal with that. All right, but now let's do this. Now this service worker should bring in this other one. Where's our register? See, I don't know how to pull this in dynamically. Okay, so what this service worker is doing is it's looking for an actual static file, which is what I created earlier. Now I'm trying to switch modes and have React kind of output this TS file and make it static. Let's see what happens. Well, for right now, let's just go ahead and import this. Let's just go ahead and require this. And hopefully it'll just deal with it. Register valid service worker. Okay. I want to do it right. Oh, I don't know how to register some service, a custom service worker. Okay, so anyway, what I'm trying to do is I'm bringing in an NPM package, right? I'm trying to figure out how to get access to that NPM package on the actual client, but I'm doing it kind of at the service worker level, which I've just figured out how to do with a regular JS file. But the problem with the JS in here is that it's not transpiled, which means Webpack is not looking at it, which means Webpack is not figuring out those node modules and transpiling and bundling them all together. This is all kind of like pre-bundling, which is the whole point, right? Because this service worker is loading up when my application loads up. And service workers can get you in a lot of trouble, I hear. I don't know. I haven't really used them. I've only played around with them, so I've studied a little bit. Have not actually used them in a production application yet. But service workers cache things heavily, including themselves. And so if you put some bad code in a service worker, especially this root service worker, you can completely hose your application because you can, infinitely cache or whatever. And literally the only way to get around that is to go and do what I did earlier, which is go to your application and delete the service worker kind of manually, right? So it's a little bit easier right now because I have this update on reload option here for my service workers in debug mode. So it's always going and getting the latest. So I'm not killing myself in dev, in test while I'm testing. But yeah, I mean, you can really kill yourself with service workers. So here I'm flailing a little bit to get this library. What is the right way? Oh, let me go back to not doing this. Let me go back to what I was just doing with JavaScript. Oops. JavaScript, fetch request. All right. And let's just go and look and see what this other library is doing. Maybe it's simple enough that we can just kind of copy and paste it for now. I believe that it is. Let's look at this. It brings isomorphic fetch and ES6 promise polyfill. So this is a library that's very careful about where it's operating. So it's actually bringing in the ES6 promises and isomorphic fetch, which is a fetch that works on the server and the client. I don't need either of those. I know that I have promises, and I know that I have the fetch API. So I should just be able to pretty much copy this code just for now. Yeah, so if I just copy this whole thing. Whoops, where am I going? Going back to my, there we go. So if I copy this and say, there we go, ready, yeah, retry, fetch with retry. Okay, cool. Options. URL options. Okay, that's fine. Cool. So let me go ahead and pull the request from here. Event. From the event. All right, so that's going to be my request. Those are going to be my options, and then I can do URL from the request, which I don't need that line. Okay, cool. So I'm going to turn this into a little debug just for now, and I will register this event respond with. So this overrides. Let's go back over here and see what it does. So this overrides the event. So this is the event handler. And so we can just say async function. Cool. All right, delete this code. So always on every single fetch call, we're going to say fetch with retry. And we're going to do event request and event request.url. So we're going to pass it. We don't need this. So we're going to basically just call that library that I copied and pasted. Let's see what happens. So that library has some options that we'll get back to. So this might not immediately fix my problem. We might need to pass some options in first. But let's just see if this works at all. There we go. Okay. So let's see if we have some failed requests. All right. So that succeeded just because my server, that was quote unquote the second try, right? Because I had another try before. So if I reload, this should fail. It failed. Yeah. Failed to execute fetch and worker global scope. Whoa. Okay. Cannot construct a request with a request init whose mode member is set to navigate. Oh man, I have no idea what this is. Let's Google that and see what happens. Anybody seen this before? Tell me in chat if you have any ideas about what this might be. Let's see what Stack Overflow has to say. Okay. Oh, okay. Interesting. Creates a new request object. Okay, all right. So, okay. It seems like I want to use this overload, which is kind of what I thought. Okay. So let's go back here. So this, when I copied and pasted this API is the URL and options to create a new one. Let's see if I can just replay or send in the existing one. Let's try this. Just pass that through. Right? All right, let's just make sure where are all the references here. Find all the references. Yep. That's just, yep. That's looking at the retry on. So those are the options before that I was talking about. Retry on, retry delay, retries. This can be number, how many times to retry, the delay to retry. So this is how you can use that exponentially increasing delay. And retry on, I think, is what we're going to end up needing. You can pass in the error codes, the status codes that you actually want to retry on. So you can say retry on 402 and 403, but not 502 or whatever, right? So I think we're going to end up setting those in a little bit, but let's just see what happens here. Let's just see if we can just make it a pass-through right now, even if it doesn't even work. Okay, so I remove that and I remove this. So let's try that, save that. Let's go back to my app here. Refresh. Failed. Why don't you... Zagis says, why don't you try to overwrite fetch? Something like this. Let me see. Original fetch. Yeah, I could. So I don't, the reason I'm not overwriting in the window, I generally don't like to overwrite browser APIs, right? Because that can screw up a bunch of different things. And so the reason I'm doing it in the service worker is basically that I'm looking at the request, and as it goes out, I want to watch for it, and if it fails, I just want to kind of replay it behind the scenes, right? So the idea here is hopefully I come up with a solution that's completely transparent, right? So when the application makes the request, they're just using the regular fetch API. It's not overwritten, it's not anything, right? It's not changed. And so as the browser API evolves, right? Like if the fetch API itself in the browsers changes, gets added, I don't want to have to update that in my override. And so this is why I'm just kind of watching what Fetch is doing, and if it succeeds, then cool, right? Otherwise, I'm gonna do it with this. So that's my thinking. But I mean, that's a legitimate question. Anyway, yeah. So while we were talking, this worked, right? So it passed it through, came back with an error. That error showed up in the application. So basically, the application looks exactly like it does before. It didn't retry, right? Like I said, this is it's not completely unexpected. Yeah. Okay. So it didn't retry. But now let's go back here and let's take this request and create a new object out of it. So if you're not familiar with this is the spread operator, the object spread operator. So this basically says take all of the properties of the request object and assign them to properties in this new object that I just created. And then I'm also going to say retry on, right? So that is, let's get this out. Let me clear my search. There you go. All right, retry on here, right? If we look at jump back to this guy. If we look at the docs over here, it talks about exponential backoff, which I will do. Let's do that in a little while. Retry on 503 service unavailable, right? So here's the example of saying, here's where you retry on specific error codes. So apparently the default behavior is that this isn't actually anything that you should retry on. Or at least, yeah, it didn't retry on 500. So it's not retrying on anything. That's the default. So I want to say retry on, let's say 500, right? Because that's my chaos monkey right now is 500. So now if I just save that, refresh the application, let's see what happens. Oh, syntax error. What? Oh, what's the syntax error? Okay, that was weird. Okay. All right, now it succeeded. Let's see. So let's just look at contacts. Let's filter by contacts and clear it. See what happens here. I'm going to refresh. 200. What? That was weird. Okay. Okay, that was weird. All right, 500. Did not work. It did not work. Why not? Fetch did not work. I wonder if I have some kind of recursive thing going on here. When I fetch, it's calling this, which is calling itself, maybe, I don't know. I would expect a crash or something if that happened. So why is this not working? All right, let's go to my test page now so I don't have to keep reloading the application. So here is that contacts, that same, and here's my optional status code. But I can trigger either a fetch request or an Ajax request. So that should fail, right? Because the last one succeeded, that one should succeed. Okay. Fail. Yeah, cool. All right, so now what is happening? So it is returning a 500. I am retrying on 500, but it's not actually catching it. Why not? Well, what if I just hand roll this myself? Let's go back to that blog post that we saw in the beginning. And where is that blog post? That blog post that talked about, yeah, the fetch retry. Let's just try this. Let's just try this. So forget about all of this. This isn't working. There's that library. Okay, so let's respond with. Okay, function resolves. I'm returning a new promise. URL is going to be the event request URL. Actually, I just want to pass this in directly, right? Because that's all the things that we were seeing earlier. That's how we got that error, is that I tried to call it with the URL and the options. So you just want to pass in the options. Fetch, then resolve. That's good. And let's just put a little request failed, just to see when it gets here. All right. Oh, this needs to be a function. Okay. Let's create this function then. Whoops. Let's retry. Okay, options and -1. Okay. All right, options. Okay, so we will say options and the current. I guess it's n in here. No, yeah, I guess it's n is what it's looking for. So n will default to 0. Okay. And so here we will just call fetch retry and event.request. And yeah, we'll just leave it like that, n equals 0. Let's try that. Now if we go back to the application, reload, site can't be reached, okay. 500 chaos monkeys, still no good. What do we got? My console. My console, let me, so let's see. I'm not seeing the error here, right? So let's just console.debug, make sure this is being called actually. Oh, this is not like that. It's screwing up my application. Why is it not? Why is it? None of this is getting written here. I'm not even seeing this fetch call. It's interesting. The fetch calls are not being logged. What if I go back here and clear my service workers? Let's try that. All right, deleted. Yeah, all right, let's see. Maybe there's some errors in there. No, it's good, it's running. This one had some errors. Content, loaded service worker, okay. Now I'm not even seeing these debug messages. That's obnoxious. Why is that? What if maybe I did something wrong here. Do I have an error? Let's look at my errors over here. No, I don't have an error. It's working. What if I comment this out and comment this out and just go back to the beginning? Let's see. Okay, cool. All right, okay, all right. Okay, so I think I have an error in my, maybe it's because I'm using async await. So let's try, going back to MDN and seeing what they did. No, they use the async function. What happens if I just pass it through? Let's try that. make sure that works. Interesting. That's not even showing any messages. So copying straight from MDN with the event listener is not actually working. Async function. Oh, because it's calling itself, maybe? Is that the issue? That might be the issue. There we go. All right, cool. Nope. What is going on here? It's interesting. Let's try and update this guy. Huh. Why? Huh. Maybe I don't want to use respond with. What? Okay. Let's just wrap this. Let's listen to this and just extend it. So we'll do fetch and then catch. And for now, we'll just start by saying, let's just log it, right? Console.warn failed request. There we go. Let's try this. Okay, that's a good sign. All of our fetch requests. All right, get, it's going to fail. What happens when we just say then? I should say got response, cool. Got response. All right. Wait, was it showing and I... Oh, it was showing. Did I miss it? I completely missed it. Hold on, let's see. So then let's say error catch. So I think the issue here, now it's been a little while, but I think that even a 500 error doesn't actually trigger the catch exception. You need to actually have a local exception triggered in your local code for the catch exception to trigger, I think. So I think a regular request, a response, is the response, and then we can say if response dot status equals 500. So we'll just hard code this. So we're looking at every request now, every response actually. That'll failed request. Okay, cool. So that's where we want. All right. So now, every time a request has failed, let's do this. So this is why I don't understand why this was kind of written this way, because this doesn't actually work. The catch function doesn't trigger, which might be why our warnings weren't being called. Let me go back to this code here and see how they're doing it. Yeah, they're doing a catch. So let's see. When does fetch catch occur? This is the fail handler, right? Right, okay, right. Per MDM, the fetch API only rejects a promise when a network error is encountered, although this usually means permissions issues or similar. Right. So, yeah. Here you go. Right. So this is saying that it only triggers catch or this code when an actual network attempt fails. So this is the example where we have rough internet connectivity, right? We're failing to reach the server's offline, or our network connection's bad, or whatever, right? And the request actually fails. That's when this gets triggered. Otherwise, this is a successful request, meaning the server has sent a response, regardless of the status code. Could be 500, 400, whatever, right? So there's where this is the one where we actually have to look at the status code, and here's that retry on, right? That's why I had to add that retry on earlier. So now let's see. We'll look at, now that we know that, we can uncomment this again, and basically let's see, evaluate result. Yeah, well, hold on. Before I start optimizing and doing clean code, let's just do this. Let me just copy the handler. All right. So let's, whoa, sorry about that. Okay, oh, sorry. Stop pressing keys. Okay, all right, let's look at the result, and we will say if result dot okay. All right, so what is this? Fetch API result okay. Let's look at this. So what is fetch API? Where's the fetch? The service worker. Let's see. Fetch API response okay. Let's look at this. Okay, the read property interface contains a Boolean string indicating whether the response was successful. All right, so I need a 200 level response is successful. So 300s are going to be like redirects and stuff, which I don't want to include in this. 400s are going to be kind of legitimate errors. So like you got a request and it's 404 or whatever. I'm not going to retry that. So all I really want to know is 500. So I'm not going to be looking at OK. I'm going to be just looking at status, the status code. If status code is greater than equal to 500, that's what I consider to be an error. Then we will execute this code. Otherwise, just pass this in. Cool. Okay. So now that's that. So that when we actually got a successful response, that's how we're going to handle it. Check the status code. This is a part on failure, right? This is where we don't have internet connectivity or whatever. I think I'll just leave this alone. This is just try it again, right? Yeah, cool. So now let's go ahead and try and run with this. Is this gonna make the call twice? Maybe, probably. That's probably what's gonna happen there. Probably. We'll get back to that later. Request failed executing fit. Retry. Okay. What is this? So okay, so this is cool. So we can see we're doing it, right? We're making multiple requests. Now, are they succeeding? Yeah, it finally succeeded. Cool. Cool. All right, so cool. We can actually go through the history and see when we go and try and make a fetch call, the service worker picks it up and tries it again. And we even have the initiator, right? So where's the original one? Let me clear this. So we never have the initiator actually being my application or my button or whatever. But yeah. Okay, so now we have 4 requests here. So that's probably because we did not use the respond with. So now let's say event.respond with. And let me go copy that code from this guy. Yeah, and there's an async function. Let me copy the whole thing. Okay, and turn this line with this line, delete all these caching, save this. We should be all good now. All right, let's go back. Let's reload just to make sure we're on the latest version of the web worker or the service worker. No, that has an error, so that's no good. Let's see. Cool. All right, good. Up and running. All right, loaded service worker. Cool. Now, trigger the Ajax request. Loading. 500. No! All right, why is respond with not actually working? The code that I'm copying directly from MDN is not actually working, which is very frustrating. What if I just do this? Since that is the code from MDN. Oh, I already have the debug message in there. Why? This is very interesting. Maybe if I get rid of this and just say call Fetch-Retry. Okay. No. It is not. All right, I'm going to go back to what worked. Okay, well, it didn't work. That's the whole problem. That's why I went down this road, is because this is taking, I'm getting, maybe I'm listening to the wrong event. So this is listening to every fetch event, every fetch request, and then it's also making another fetch request, right? So that's why it's working, but I'm getting multiple requests in here. So if I save this and refresh, we can see that this should never return with an error. Okay, apparently it did. Did I not go back far enough? Well, now I'm totally lost. Okay, yeah, I went back too far. There we go. All right, sorry. Okay, so now this should never return with an error. Let me clear my service workers. It was working. You all saw it. It is retrying. Oh, you know why it was probably working before? Because of my chaos monkey. It was probably, no, I don't know about that. Okay. All right, well, so this is the code that I need. I just need to overwrite, and we can see that it's actually, it's catching it, it's making the request and everything, right? So this is all happening. It's just not doing exactly. No, it's not working at all. Let's update. Let's unregister. So you see what I mean about service workers and caching. This is the latest code. Okay, return fetch retry event request. We had it working. No, I'm not seeing anything. Okay. Okay, all right. Yeah, so here we go. Okay. Right, okay, right. Here we go. So this is in the background. I think that's the old one returning, maybe. No. So we had 3. Yeah, okay, so this is the new one that was triggered, and then it came back with 200, and that is successful. We trigger this again. So that's the initial one. We still have like 5 or 6 happening, which is, that's what I would expect to happen because of this. So what we want to do is, so events.respond with, does this have errors? No, it's good. Event respond with, that's the latest code, that's good. But now it's not executing anymore. Why is event respond with not actually doing anything? Okay, let's Google that. Oh, no, that's the page we were just on. MDN event. Fetch event fires anytime any service controlled by a service worker is fetch. All right, so I think that's kind of the difference here. So controlled by a service worker. Yeah, I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not. But let's see. Recovering failed requests. Yeah. So this is just all talking about caching. This is the cache implementation. And then this is updating your service worker. Okay, so this is all kind of specific to this implementation. It's not really fallback response. Okay. Activate fetch. All right, event. Okay, right, so if it matches the regex that we're looking for, then call this. All right, they're using event respond with fetch. So they're just making that. Maybe it's not. Okay, what if I just do this? Is that it? Is that it? We still had 2, right? So if you look at this, when I click it once, we get the original one, and then it immediately, yeah, so the diagnostics page kicks off one, and then this one, the service worker immediately triggers another one. So what we want to do, respond with, should override it. Why is it kicking off a second one? So we can see that our code is executing, right? Let's make sure that it is our code. Yeah, so this is the latest code. And just for the heck of it, let's go ahead and clear, refresh. Yeah, okay, so our code is being called. For some reason, oh, is that working? No. Now our service worker is not actually working, I think. Now our service worker is not being registered at all. Now we got nothing. Loaded service worker. Okay, so it is loading. Content is cached. Respond with Fetch-Retry. So maybe this is not what we wanted. How do I override? How do I override? Respond with fetch. This is exactly what they're doing. This is exactly what they're doing. So why is it not working for us? Implicit return can only cache online, past a promise. Yeah, okay, you're missing a return keyword. Great. But here's another good example. Respond with. Yeah, this is all promise based. Yeah. I don't know. Anybody on the chat have any ideas here? I'm just looking at random examples. Yeah, but they're returning it directly. Careful with async, that's fine. A respond with must be called between the fetch event firing and control returning to the browser. If you're handling an event, either do something immediately or tell the browser to hang on until your asynchronous stuff is done. Yeah, okay, that's interesting. And I do want to deal with that at some other point. Basically, even though we're kind of doing this in the background underneath, I do want to give some notification to the application that we have retried or whatever. So in case we are really offline, then the application can actually deal with that. So this isn't going to be strictly behind the scenes. Okay, so these are all just responding with a fetch request, right? So that makes total sense. All right, well, what if we just do this? What if we just do this? What's a recursive call? That's why we can't do it. Yeah, it's a recursive call. That's why we can't do it. Interesting. So we need to do this, which is exactly what we are doing. Well, why don't we just do this? Is that why? Because we're returning a promise? No, that is not why. Because then we are rejecting or resolving. All right, well, let's forget this for right now. Let's just, so that retry is n-1. Let's just retry, right? Let's just do, try and fetch, and if it fails, try and fetch it again. We have to do this in a promise, wrap this in a promise. Resolve or reject. Okay, fetch dot Nope, 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 nope. Then resolve, catch, reject. And let's just comment this out for now, because basically whatever we do up here, we will then copy and paste for the catch. All right, let's go back to our browser window and see what we got here. Success. Let's see, look at network requests, clear them. Pending. This should fail. Let's update my service worker. Oop, I have an error on my service worker. I don't know what the error is. Let's clear my service workers so we can start over fresh again. All right, network. Let's look at this. Clear the network, try it again. Okay. So this, once again, is not being called. This has to do something with promises, it seems. But fetch is a promise. Console.debug. This console. Oh, I have an error there. Yeah, okay. I had an error because it all right, cool. Options is not defined. Yeah, okay. Here's that error that kept happening on load. Yep, okay, cool. All right, options is not defined. Of course it's not. Event.request is what I'm looking at. Let's keep that. All right, options and options. Whoa. Okay. Cool. All right. Good. There we go. Executing with retry. Cool. Now let's try and refresh. Now, all right. So that's what was happening earlier. Is my service worker is kind of in an error state, and so it's just not really trusting it, I think. Loaded service worker, cool, trigger. I'm not seeing the message that it was loading, executing with retry. So that's disconcerting. I'm starting to wonder whether this is really the event that I want to look for. Add event listener fetch. Is there other events? Let's see. Oh, no, I don't want to. This is, I want to read that. Okay. Service worker API is the fetch event. Can modify the response to these requests in any way you want using the respond with method. All right, let's go back to the beginning here. Prevents the browser's default fetch handling, allows you to provide a promise for a response yourself. Provide a promise. All right, that's what we're doing. We're providing a promise. It's a new promise. Resolve, reject. Yes, we are resolving. We can also, for the heck of it, catch, reject. Okay. I guess no, I don't have to return because this is resolving. All right. Okay, so the first time this calls, we're going to make the fetch request And then when it responds with a 500, if it's greater than or equal to 500, we're going to do a warning and then try again one more time. It should only do it once. If that fails, then we are out of luck. And we know that this is happening because we have console messages that are not showing up. All right, so once again, let's try and make a change. Interesting. So just adding that line and saving it and refreshing made the service worker work. That's odd. See, this is what I was talking about. Very, very frustrating working with service workers because they are cached so heavily. You never know when they're loading or restarting or whatever. All right, now, so it's the code that's been there pretty much the entire time, or at least for the past 5 minutes. Now that's working. So if we look at the network, it's still making 2 calls. So that's unfortunate. Maybe I can't trust this. Maybe this is just saying that the service worker is kind of taking over this call and doing it for me. Maybe I'm just reading that log wrong. But anyway, the point here is that we are only getting successful responses the more we hit this. So that's with fetch request, and now let's try the Ajax again. Even though I already proved that Ajax requests are fetch or $Ajax, jQuery Ajax requests are fetch requests. Cool. So there we go. We've got nothing but successful responses in our app. So now, if I close this, go back to my demo app, it might take a while, but it will always load. Fail, retry, fail, retry, go back, fail, retry, fail, retry. So we got a bunch of failures, but we'll just keep retrying. Here's that test user. Now, this should be successful. Let's save that. Saved, and let's just add it again. Oh, okay, there's an error. Now, why didn't that get replayed? Interesting, okay. So this tried to failed to execute fetch on global worker scope, cannot construct a request with a request. Oh, okay, it was already been used. Okay, all right, right. So this is saying, yeah. This is saying we need to pull the URL. When we do a new one down in here, we gotta do it again. There we go. Odd that that only happened with the post. It's interesting. I really need to have a fill in here. Test. Yeah, cool. Right. So we got a failure. Request failed. We got some failures in here. So this failed request is it was a post request to contacts. With all this, it failed, but the chaos monkey, and then reposted, and we can see undefined. That's interesting. Let's try this again. Actually, let me restart the server so we can see when it's working. Where's my server? I'm going to restart the server. Restart. Let's refresh this page. Okay, cool. Now we're refreshed. All right. Let's do test user. Did that fail? Yep, failed, and it worked. Undefined. Now that's interesting. Okay, so, did it resend the request the right way? That might be the problem. Do I have any errors? Do you know anything about sending form input into another page? I see red. Welcome, I see red. Do you know anything about sending form input onto another page with JS, then having it submit? Trying to figure out why my user input submits onto a new page, but the new page is not submitting the input I sent. Okay, I think that's a little bit different than what I'm talking about here, but it sounds like, I guess if you're trying to do a form on submit, you're handling that event. It's doing the Ajax request and then reposting, it sounds like what you're saying. In that case, you might want to just kind of return a false or a null value or something or prevent default, right? Do the event.prevent default in that handler to actually prevent the form handler from posting and refreshing the page and everything. And rather just do your Ajax request and then respond there. I think that's probably what you're missing. So thanks for joining. Thanks for chatting. I see red. Please feel free to follow. Tell your friends about me. I'm trying to get up to 10 followers. I've got 1. Brand new channel. So I'm looking for more follows. So please feel free to follow and tell your friends to follow. Cool. So what are we looking at here? Can you take a look? I might be able. Thank you for the follow. I see red. Can I take a look? Let me take a look. Let me finish this up, what I'm doing right now. And then, yeah, maybe we can take a look at that in a little bit. Because now I've almost got this working, but it's actually sending, it looks like the server is getting some undefined here. So maybe when I'm reposting, I'm not actually getting the entire request. So let's look and see what it is. What's successful? Yeah, see, this is the request headers. It's basically just sending the request again. Let's refresh, see what happens. Yeah, let's see. So this is my service worker. That's a get. Where's my post? I guess I'll have to make another one. All right, let's clear this history. So I'm wondering, I got the test user, save changes. All right, so this is sending, got a 204. All right, undefined. So where's my post? There's my post. So that just worked. The first one worked. All right, so that's not a good test. This one should fail. No? That one worked also. You know what? Let's kick a little more chaos into my chaos monkey. Let's do every third request. All right, so if it's null, then do this. So this is basically true or false, right? If it's there. All right, okay, so let's just say if this is null or 1. What? Yeah, okay. No, we'll do that. We'll leave it there. Let's see. Request count equals this. All right, so the current request count. All right, if the request count is null, we didn't have anything, or if the request count equals 1, which sure be triple equals, then introduce annotate. Okay, so if there's nothing in there, meaning this is the first request, or if it's the second request, then we'll do it. So let's see. Now we'll see request, if request count equals null or request count equals 1. Let's say if the request count equals null, request count equals 1. else if. Okay. There we go. Let's see if that'll work. So now this should be every third request should fail. So, because I'm still suspicious that these are being kicked off in parallel, which might be something that we might want to address later. So let's see. Okay, so this is good too, because this is a little bit more advanced, because we can also test our backing off as well later. So this is now my requests are failing because the first one fails, the second one fails. Well, I don't know, maybe I've just completely ruined my my server now. I probably did. Now let's do this again. Let's look at Chaos Monkey again and make sure I didn't completely screw everything up. All right. Okay. So for every request, get the request count. All right. So for the first request, it's going to be null. Okay. So it's null. Then set the request key to 1. Okay. Keep going. If in the second request it's going to be 1, so we'll go here again. If it's 1, then set it to 2. To anything. Anything. Yeah, let's just say plus equal 1. There we go. That's easier. That's easier. That works. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. All right, yeah. That was just a broken server. All right, let's try again. Cool. All right, we got something working here. All right, so if we look at the network request, we got a bunch of 500s, we got a bunch of errors. Let's reload. Fail, fail, fail. Yeah. Fail, fail, fail. All right, that should be the third one. Let me unregister my service worker and see what happens. Fail. Jeez. Oh, my Chaos Monkey. This is null. This is null. There we go. All right. All right. Upgraded my Chaos Monkey. That should be good here. All right. Fail. Fail. Succeed. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. All right. Chaos Monkey works. Sorry about that little detour. All right. Fail. Fail. Succeed. Cool. Chaos Monkey works. All right. Let's uncomment this now. Now we should see a little bit more failures. Fail, fail, fail. Did that work? Cool. Cool, cool, cool. Cool. All right. All right. Now let's see what happens when I do my test page, trigger my Ajax request. Fail. Yeah, I think once again my service worker is not registered. There we go. Jeez, I don't know how you have to do that. Okay. Success. Failure. All right, so my service work, yeah, so we tried a bunch of times, but since now we have 3 and we're only retrying once, then we don't actually, we don't make it. So this is where we want to go back to our function. Retry. Let's say fetch with retry. Request. Cool. I see red. Yeah, we can look at that in a little while, right? But I guess I see red. Did you get that working? Is that what you're saying? Clean up the code a bit. Looks like it's not hitting the ID post me in JS function. You know, let me open this up for you. Let's see what's going on here. Let's take a look at this real quick. Send data on click, right? You got your button clicking. It's not hitting the ID. So what did you say there? You said it's not hitting the ID in the post me function. Ah, yeah, I see what you're doing. Oh, you're saying you're just not actually getting anything here. That's a should. You narrowed it down to the problem. Okay. All right, cool. We'll take a look at this later. Let's jump on. We'll have another session with that. Let me wrap this up because we're getting pretty close, and I got to break for lunch because I am hungry. Okay, cool. So now if we do respond with fetch with retry request. And kick the application a bunch of times, make a bunch of changes to show that it's working. That's okay. Fail, success. Yeah, and okay, unexpected error. Oh, okay. I got a bug here. All right. Let's clear my service workers. Refresh. Oh, I still have a syntax error somewhere. Ah, okay. Boom, boom. That's the end of here. Yeah, that's open, close, open, close. That's this. No. Oh, okay. Cool. All right. I had a syntax error in my service worker. Cool, loaded service worker, we're all good. All right, now it's kicking in again. Okay, KS monkey. Okay, all right, that's good. So this needs to, yeah, the problem is here, if I pass this in, it's gonna yell at me again. Let's see. I want to call this again and pass in the URL, which is different than this guy. That's the problem. So how can I do this with the request URL? Well, let's say okay, so the first time all right, fetch calls. Yeah, okay, now I got to do something weird. Okay, so the initial time is just going to be the object which will pass through, and we'll see if type of request equals string. So the second time the request is going to be a URL. request or URL and options. Okay, so if request or URL, type of request or URL, all right, get fetch call. All right, I'm trying to figure out which call to do. Are we just calling with this, or are we calling with this, right? So if we are past a string, meaning it's this, then I want to do fetch request or URL ops. Otherwise, just do request or URL. How about that? Okay. Now let's get request equals request. Sorry, I'm going to pull this out. Okay, so if our type is string, then the request equals ops. Sorry, I'm backing out. I'm coming at this a different way. Otherwise, our request is the request or URL. Okay. Now, if the request, that's the request, and then the fetch call, yeah, cool. This should work. Fetch call, then. All right, let's see if this works. Okay, so we're doing fetch with retry. What happened? Success. Cool. It did it again. Cool, cool, cool. There we go. So executing with retry, executing retry. All right. So now we've got our recursive. So this is just going to keep triggering those fetch requests every single time. So we have made pretty good progress. So I am going to go take a break. I'm going to have some lunch. Here we see some errors, 2 errors, and a third one. So there we go, right? We're good at this point. I got a lot more to do on this. So I'm going to go take a break. I'm going to have some lunch, probably about 30 minutes or so, and I will be back on at about 1:30 p.m. Eastern. So thanks for joining. If you liked the content, please do follow. I would love to have some more followers. Thank you, IC Red, for following. So I'll be back in a little bit. All right, I am back. I just realized that both my webcam and my headset mic have been picking up my audio this whole time. Hopefully that hasn't caused an echo or anything. Or maybe it's made the sound better. I don't know. Okay, cool. So just to recap everything that we've done, the reason I have 3 debug lines here is because I had to do that to make my service worker actually reload when I make changes. So I'll delete those. But here's what I've done. I started with a create React app application. I added a service worker. I had to update. Let me see. Let's look at what I've done. Let's look at the diff here. Why is my TS config? I didn't. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Super interesting. TypeScript just picked that up. Huh. So that's cool. We should come back to that. Although it's no emit, so it's not actually going to create the JS. Anyway, I can create another TypeScript just for those. Okay, cool. So I added my new service worker. I updated my chaos monkey to actually do 3 failed requests rather than 2. And I registered my service worker. So this is the boilerplate code that Create React App creates, and it's created and kind of the code is there, but it's unregistered at first, so I just registered it. And then I updated my service worker to ignore the production mode and do it on all modes. And the rest of these changes are just linting changes, but prettier changes that happened when I formatted the file. So that's where we're at. Okay, so my original goal was to take any Ajax request in my site, whether it was jQuery Ajax or Fetch or whatever, XHTML request, which I don't actually have an example for. I guess I could whip one up real quick, but whatever, I'm not going to do that now. Take any Ajax request in my site and retry it if it failed. So failure being simply the result of 500 or greater. While we're here, let's look at this catch. Let's do. Well, okay. Let me finish my recap before we get into that. So what is still outstanding is if it fails for an actual network reason, like the network is down or whatever. That's what is uncommented here. Which now that it is. Now that we've got this, we should just be able to copy that, paste that in there. But I'll get back to that in a minute. Okay, so there was a couple of different things that I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to retry, and now this is like an infinite retry. There's no wait or anything. So like if we're offline, like offline, like have no connection, and we open up this page, it's just going to whale. It's just going to create requests, which I guess should be fine because the requests aren't actually going out. But we could, I guess, theoretically get into a condition. Well, sorry, if we were offline, then this would be the condition. But anyway, I guess we could get into a condition where the server was down, like the server was actually having a problem, and we're just wailing that server, and we don't even wait. And as well as the offline thing, which let's just go ahead and do it. I'm going to stop talking about it. Keep referring to it without doing anything. Let's undo this. And let's copy this. I don't have to do the status is greater than 500 because we're definitely in an error if we get to this point, right? So there we go. Just throw that error in there. Just for some console. Okay, so we can save that. All right, cool. So now we're doing the same thing. So now, if we go and turn, so let's do the fetch Ajax request. That'll be 500, 500, 200. Cool. Now if we go offline, and yeah, there we go. So now we're just pumping this with request, and almost certainly the performance, like our UI is probably gonna like stop functioning. Although to that point, if I'm not mistaken, service worker activities actually happen on a background thread. I think, pretty sure. So even if this were doing a lot of CPU intensive stuff, our UI should actually continue to stay responsive, which is kind of an interesting caveat here. Let's go back online. The debug tools, however, not so responsive. Come on, go back online. Can I click it? No, I can't click anything. Okay. Let's do this then. Let's kill that tab. Don't kill the whole window. Just kill the tab. Let's get back over here. There we go. And do this. Get some space over here again so we can see our code. All right, let's bring that debug window back up. We're online again. Okay, cool. So now we're all good. We're on our test page. We can go test an Ajax request. Chaos Monkey. What? That wasn't supposed to happen. Why did that not happen? Look at that. Our service worker is not happening again. It was requested. Was it registered? It wasn't registered. Why is it not registered all the time? That is so weird. Let me clear my data. Okay, loaded service worker. So that I don't know about that. See, this is I've only started recently working with service workers, so yeah, it's kind of some black magic stuff. But when they work, they work. But I mean, I guess theoretically there is a chance, obviously, that we could get this in our application where our service worker is not actually responding to these requests and handling them. Anyway, so we've gotten to this point where apparently my service worker isn't working. So I'm going to do the debug trick, copy another line, reload. Now it's working. Yeah? No? just happened to be respond. Yeah. Now it's working. Okay. So apparently, if you ever need to get your service worker to reload, you add a debug line. I don't know. Yeah, sure. I guess it's like the content has changed, so it downloads it again or something like that. But that's the whole point, right? It is cached very, very aggressively, even when I have all of these switches on to update on reload and all this stuff, right? Like it's still cached very aggressively. Anyway, we're looking good here. We've got those requests being retried. It retries infinitely. So I think the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do like a back off thing. So I will keep track of how many times we've retried, and I'll do that exponential back off. So now, while we were running, while we were researching, I ran into this library that I didn't end up using because I couldn't figure out how to load a node request. Actually, no, it yelled at me for sending the for how it was implemented. Let me see. Did it yell at me? Let's look at that code again. Actually, yeah, it yelled at me because I was using this version. So apparently, when we're in the service worker and we're retrying requests, we have to use the overload of fetch that only takes in the options or the request to replay it. So since this one is implemented like this by passing in the URL and the options or the request, it threw an error. And so that means we can't use this library. But we can still steal a lot of code from it because ultimately this is what we're doing, right? We're doing all this stuff. And the only difference now between this library and what we're doing is that it has all these options of being able to retry on and a function and stuff and counting the attempted retries, have a max retry or whatever. So basically we just, unfortunately, we re-implement this library, I guess. So there's a couple of things that this library does. So it's exponential backoff, right? So default behavior is to wait a fixed amount of time between attempts. But it's also possible to customize this by passing a function as the retry delay option. Right. So let's go back and implement the attempt tracking. So let's start by implementing just retry once, right? Which in our scenario, at least with like a fresh API, that will not suit our needs because we need to retry twice, right? So we have two failures. Chaos Monkey right now, first two failures first two requests are failures, and then the last request is the one that succeeds, or the third request. So if I just retry once, I should be able to see the retries, but still result in a failed response. So now, let's see. Fetch with retry, options, and then retry. Let's see, retry count. Yeah, see, now we're getting into funky stuff here. Why don't we do this? Why don't we refactor this a little bit and say, make this an object. Request options, right? It's ops. I don't need ops, I just need the request. Or URL retry count equals 0. Retry attempt. Let's see. This is the attempt. Okay. And we'll hard code retry count equals 1. Right. So we're only going to retry once. Okay. So I just refactored this. So the request. All right. So now we say if URL is not equal to null, then do URL. Otherwise, do this. So that's cool. And I can just inline that. Okay. All right, now that's a refactor. Okay, cool. So now we have our retry attempt. I'm just assuming that worked. I hope it does. I don't know. We'll see in a minute. Okay, so retry attempt. Oh, it won't work because we have requester URL. There we go. Okay. So this now I need to convert into URL request. Yeah, that would not have worked at all. URL and request. And then this needs to be an object here. Cool. So now we have parameterized our thing. Okay, so now we just need to pass in this retry attempt, right? So retry attempt, we can actually just copy right in here. Retry attempt. +1, right? So you can pass that in. Same deal here. It's kind of lame that we have to read. Well, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at this. I mean, it's duplicate code, right? It'd be cool if we could turn it into a variable or function or something, but I'll get back to that later. Don't want to get sidetracked now. Okay, so now we're passing in the retry attempt. Now we just have to read it. So now we have to say when it fails, if retry attempt is greater than retry count, then reject and console.warn let's say retry attempts exceeded abandoning request. Okay, so there's that. Same thing here. Man, I don't like that. I really want to refactor that now. Let's just go ahead and do that. Okay, retry request. Pass in the resolve and reject. Cool. Okay. Retry request, resolve, reject, or retry request. Resolve. And I'm going to convert this into a lambda or a arrow function just because I love arrow functions. Cool. Now we've cleaned that up a little bit. All right. Hopefully it works. I don't know. I just made a lot of changes without really testing anything. So hopefully that works. Of course, we'll never know because, you know what? Why don't I'm going to change this with a timestamp. It's not going to tell me the timestamp of the, whatever. Okay. Let's see. Let's refresh here. Sorry, I'm getting some texts. Okay, cool. So this should fail, right? That's it. One retry and failed. Okay, so that's not the latest code. Let's go back here, clear our storage, blah, blah, blah. Okay, go back here, refresh the page, loaded service worker, it's a good sign. Chaos monkey, okay, it's not loading. Okay, let's do the trick. Boom. Look at that. Now it works. I really wish I knew why that worked. Okay, executing with retry. Oh, that's the old one. Success. Failed. No, it's retrying again. It should only retry once, right? So we're getting two of these things. Request failed It's retrying again. Okay. Let's just do this. Console debug and what's going on? 1 second. All right, sorry about that. Cool. Let's do a debug, retry, attempt. This will also tell us if we're running on the new code. Executing with retry. Okay, retry attempt 0. Cool. All right, run that. Retry attempt 0. 1, 2, succeed. Okay. So where am I going wrong here? If retry attempt, let's put it down in here then. Let's try that. Retry attempt 0, 1. Maybe I'm in an off by 1 thing here. All right. Oh, did that work? No. Let's just bump it up manually. Retry attempt 1. Cool. Okay, cool. Yeah, okay. That's fine. I guess that should have been greater than or equal to retry count. Okay. Well, you know, that looks nicer. If I say 1, retry attempt 1 instead of retry attempt 0, it's just a nicer debug experience there. Okay, so the first attempt, second attempt, retry event. Okay, cool. And then you just throw out the promise was rejected. All right. So it's an interesting error. That's unfortunate. We should probably clean that up later, do something a little bit better. But for now, it is what it is. So it worked. Cool. So now we've got retry attempts. So we can say we can pull the retry count. Let's just pass this in, retry count, and we can default it to what? Let's default it to 5 or whatever. And then we can actually, we can pull this from the request. So here is where this is now where we're starting to kind of blur the lines, right? Like we're doing something in the background and we're actually adding something to the request. So now when people make the Ajax call, when the devs make the Ajax call, they can actually pass in a retry count to have it retry a couple different times, right? And so by default, if it's null, we can say retry count equals retry count or 5, right? Which we should make that a constant if we're doing good stuff. Default retry count equals 5. I've got a dog barking in the background. All right, and now there we go. Retry count. Cool. So then we can change that. Now let's turn that back to 1, just to test it out again. Assuming we have the latest code, who knows? Nope. What's going on here? Huh, okay, let's look at this. Retry attempt. Retry count equals retry count. Maybe it'll work just because I made that. Yeah, okay, retry count 1, 2. Oh, retry count. Oh, yep, I did not pass that on when I made the call again, right? There we go. We got to pass that on, of course, because this is recursive. You have to remember that it's recursive. Okay, try again. One, and abandon request. Awesome, cool. So that's a bit of refactoring. We added retry in here. So now, just to recap again, any Ajax request in the site, whether it is XHTML or was XMLHTTPRequest, that old school one's been around for 10 years, $Ajax, the jQuery Ajax, or Fetch, the latest Fetch API, they all end up going through the Fetch event in that you can listen to in the service worker. And I've registered, I'm going to get rid of this one because we don't need that anymore. I've registered a listener for each of those events to respond with. Rather than executing it with the standard fetch, I go ahead and do a fetch with retry, right? And I pass the request through along with a retry count or a default retry count. So now then I go through and I execute that request to the retry, right? So it's a recursive call. So if this fails, where does it fail? Oh, fetch with retry. This is the. Oh, I can't even look at my code anymore. Here, let me see. Minify this. What's happening here? Right. Okay. That's just our handler, right? So on the first pass, we just go ahead and make a fetch call, right? We pass in the request. We don't pass in the URL. And so when the URL is null, we call this version of fetch, and this just passes the request on, right? So basically, when the original caller calls fetch, then we just pass that on and call fetch for it, right? And everything is cool. But then we also add our own handlers. So we have two handlers here. The first handler is a successful result. So successful result means that the network request returned something. The network request itself didn't fail, like a connection error or a network error, or an underlying network error. When that happens, the underlying network error, that is when the catch is triggered, right? So every time an underlying network error happens, just try and retry the request. In the then trigger, so like whenever a request successfully comes back, that quote unquote success could be an actual error, right? So we have to check the status code. In my kind of hard-coded logic here, this is my retry logic, right? Should you retry or you retry on every error code greater than or equal to 500? So that to me is what I'm qualifying as an error. Because even things like 400, 403, 401, all of those things, they're technically like errors. They're expected errors. They're not server-side errors. So like when you call and request something that doesn't exist, you don't want to keep calling that thing, right? That 404 means something. It means you should stop trying to get that thing. It doesn't exist. It's never going to work. Whereas a 500 error, anything in that 500 series, means that the server is screwed up, right? Something's happening on the server. So now that that's all working, I've got a couple more things on the list. So then I introduced retries. So this is just a simple retry, max out the number of retries. Let's say for testing I did 1, now let's say 5, right? You can retry up to 5 times. So now when I trigger this, it'll execute until it succeeds, which the third one did. I got a success. I can even introduce let's bump up my chaos monkey. Let's say request count if that's null or 0 is greater than 4. So now we'll say 4 times. Let's do this. Oh, sorry, no, I didn't mean or. And. It's an and. No, what do I mean? Yeah, I meant this. There we go. Put my parentheses. Okay, yeah. Okay, because request count is null to begin with, right? So this is my Chaos Monkey. For those of you just joining, welcome. Please follow me if you find it interesting. I'm glad to have you on the channel. Feel free to pitch on the chat. So for those of you just joining, I have this Chaos Monkey. This is a function that is running on the server that basically just makes requests fail, quote unquote, randomly. It's not random at all. It's in fact, it just kind of keeps a queue or a history. Let's rename that. Request history is a better name. Request history. It keeps a history of the requests that it's seen, right, in an object. Right now, that object is empty. But for every request that it sees, it goes and it tracks how many times it's seen it. And if it has seen it less than, I'm just now bumping it up to 4 times, it breaks it and it increments that counter. Otherwise, it goes ahead and executes it with a little bit of a delay, a 200 millisecond delay. So let me save that server side, kick that server side off. So now this should start failing. Let me bump my retry to 3, right? So now that we should be back to failing. Retry count 3, fail, 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 and now abandoning retry count. Yeah, so it retried 3 times, and then the 5th time would be the charm, but I only did it 3 times. So that's cool. So my Chaos Monkey is in full effect, right? So anyway, the Chaos Monkey, it returns a 500 error, or if you pass in a query string, the Chaos query string, it will do that. I mean, yeah. It will pass that code, so I can pass a response code. So that's what I have here, my little AI, my test page, my API. I can say, let's return a 503 error. This one's a little weird because it actually attacks it onto the request, or at least it should. Yeah, right here. There's my request, right? So this is literally a request that will never succeed because Chaos Monkey will always be triggered. This will just continue. So this is interesting. Retry attempt 9. Why? What? Why are you continuing to retry? What? That's a bug. Where's my handler? If retry attempt is greater than retry count, reject, and I guess return. Oh, whoops! I forgot my return. Ah, good. You guys were supposed to tell me about that. Okay, let's retry now. Let's see. All right, so this should retry 3 times, and no more retries, no more background requests or anything. Let's see. Okay, nope, everything should stop. Cool. All right. Now if I do this again, that I'm still like in the queue, I'm still in the history. So I think like, what did we do? We did 3 or 4, 3 retries. So right, so the very first one was successful, right? So the 5th one. So I can keep doing this, right? Fetch, fail, fail, fail. That's the first one was a fail. Second is the first retry. Second retry. Third retry, and then now I can jump over to $Ajax, make that same call with a $Ajax, and it's good, right? Also, that service worker catches it as well, that fetch. So there we go. Cool. All right. So now, welcome. I got a couple more people joining on the stream. Welcome. This is my first streaming session. So I'm kind of new to this. I hope you enjoy it. Please feel free to jump in the chat and let me know what you think. Please feel free to follow me. I have a goal right now of my first 10 followers in 4 days. I think that's achievable. I don't know. I got 4 of you watching right now, so hopefully, if you guys, if a couple of you follow, then we'll be almost halfway there. Okay, so here we are. We're good. We're failing, right? We're failing because we've reached our max retry count. If I bump this back up to 5 and my app reloads now, come on. Oh, that was successful. Right. All right. So now the clock starts over. Now this retry count should be high enough that it should always succeed because it should try enough times. Yeah, and we got success. Cool. So that's that, right? That's retry attempts. That's just a hard number. Keep retrying. Now we can also pass in something like a backoff or exponential backoff or something like that, right? So in other words, we want to delay this actual fetch. So let me start off with a constant exponential. Hold on, there was a blog post, I think. No, so we're also looking at this library, the John Byrne fetch-retry library, and we're looking at this code. Even though I can't use this code because it uses this version of fetch, which you can't use in a service worker, I am copying and pasting liberally from this function. It's really just one page, a couple dozen lines. It's only 88 lines long, so that's cool. But it supports backing off. Well, that's not entirely true. It supports a retry delay function, which determines which you can use to back off. So this is my function. Yeah, it's just based off the attempt. So I'll just copy this over. I'll just kind of hard code. Let's see. And paste this in there. Attempt, error, response. And I'm just gonna do like 500 milliseconds, so half a second, just so it's not as painful when we're testing it. Error and then response. I don't know why it's passing those things in. I guess that was just the demo. Cool. So now retry delay. Oh, now I got to put my attempt back down to 0. So our delay is 0. No, I'll leave it there, and then I will set it to 0 here. Okay, so now we will find the retry delay. Okay, so we're gonna set timeout. Let's say if retry attempt is greater than 1. No, this is greater than 1. No, we're already in here. We're gonna, well, the first retry attempt will do, yeah, well, the first retry attempt, let's just do it here. Okay, sorry, ignore all that. So set timeout. Once the timeout succeeds, we will call this function, our fetch with retry, and we want to wait for retry delay, retry attempt. So this should back out. This is what I was pausing on earlier. So up here we can put that logic in, right? If attempt return if attempt equals the first attempt, right? If attempt equals 1, then return 0. So the first one, don't delay at all, and then max, then start exponentially backing off. So this should work. Obviously, this is going to apply to all requests. So in the last one, I actually kind of put that retry count in here, which we could do. We could do that. We'll do that next. Let's just make sure this works first. So okay, that just okay. So my service worker is not kicking in again. I must have a code issue here. Let's update the application. Let's clear that service worker and see that error. No, okay, okay, guess not. Do I have an error? Retry delay. Let's put a console line in here just to see. put the delay in there. Return the delay. All right, let's just see. Executing with retry. Delay 0. Yeah, okay, right. Okay, good. I guess my service worker just didn't refresh or whatever. But then that worked because I guess we were at the magic 5 number. So now if we try again, counter should be reset. Try delay 2 seconds. Woo! 4 seconds. 8 seconds. Cool. So there you go. Exponential back off. So we are waiting. It's going to be the 5th one. This is, yeah, 5th one succeeded. Cool. All right, so there's exponential back off. At this point, I'm going to do a commit. Working fetch service worker. Because once again, this is not like some pre-canned talk or anything. I'm actually writing this code live, and I do want to save this. I don't want to back off. So we've got a working version. Kind of hacky. Let's turn this into a retry delay. Pull that from the request so that people can, developers can pass it in as an option in the fetch options, retry and then pass it into here. Retry delay equals retry delay or default retry delay. There we go. Cool. I mean, we could probably inline that, but that's fine. All right. Now we can pass those in. Retry count and retry delay are options that we can pass in. Okay. So now we've got our retry, right? So any Ajax request that calls will retry. Oh, let's test the offline now because the offline should work just fine. So last time when we triggered the offline, we just kept requesting over and over and over again, right? We didn't have that back off or anything. The network request immediately failed, immediately triggered another one, which immediately failed, which immediately triggered another one. Vicious cycle, right? Now, between the retry delay and the retry count, we should be totally good. Both of those should catch it. So if we go into our network and we go offline, and we trigger our request. Oh, retry delay is not defined. Retry delay is not defined. Yeah, I know. Line 42. Oh, again, we have to pass these in. Retry delay. Retry delay. Pull that from here. There we go. Cool. I like to keep these things in alphabetical order too, but that's just a little bit of my weirdness. All right. Cool. Now it's reloading, but we're offline, so it's not going to be able to reload. Let's go back online to reload, get the new version of the service worker, which is not loaded. Man. Okay, go clear our storage. Hopefully we can get that service worker loaded. Loaded service worker. Cool. Good. All right. No. It's loaded, but it's not actually doing anything. Now, did I mess up something? Maybe is that? Well, let's do the debug trick. Yep, there we go. Jeez. Okay. Retry. Okay, while it's retrying, I'm going to go offline. Cool. So now, see, it's still retrying. Failed, right? So we had a couple of 500s. Now we're failing. Now we continue to make calls, but we're backing off, right? We're offline. The request is failing because it's literally failing to connect. My original fetch is still pending. So that's the cool thing here, right? Now when I disable this and I add these delays and these failures and stuff, my original request is still pending. Oh, it finally failed because I reached that max. So there we go. So now, I mean, do we always want to do retry counts and retry delays? Like, I don't know. It depends on the situation, right? But at least with these defaults, I have set it up so that we have some reasonable defaults. So it will, by default, exponentially back off, and it will, by default, only retry 5 times. Now, if any individual request wants to do something different, right? So like if there is a request that wants to do something that is offline, like I know that I might be offline a lot, and I just want to keep retrying until I come back online, then I can overload those methods, like let's say the retry count to max, right? Int.max or number.max, like 1,000,000, right? So just keep counting. I should probably put something in there like -1 or 0 or null or something like that, right? To indicate like don't have a retry count, but whatever. I'll just leave this as it is. But basically, you know, you can try forever, but at each time you try, you're bumping that up exponentially. So eventually, when you do come back online in a day or a couple hours or something, then your request will trigger. So now I think we've solved kind of the functional problem, the actual technical problem. Now the other issue is the UX of this, right? So the initial kind of solution here, or the initial problem I was having, was I had a flaky API, and if I made a request, that first request might fail because the API was offline, rebooting, whatever. And in that case, I just wanted to retry that same request again, possibly again and again and again until it passes, right? And so that's what this shows. So this works great. Are we back online again? No, we're still offline. So now the other solution that I want is to use this, or at least have this in my back pocket. But now I want to support something that is a very flaky connection. Flaky meaning we might actually go online or offline. And we don't really know what. Now, let's talk about that for a second, right? What's the difference between online and offline? Well, the browser has, what's it called? I think it's navigator.isOnline. Yeah, online, right? So that actually tells you if you have a network connection or not. I'm not exactly sure as to what the specific implementation of this is, but basically, like, is your network card connected? Do you have an actual connection to? I think just a network. Could just be the intranet, your local LAN, and you might have a connection to the LAN and not the internet, which doesn't mean that you can actually contact the site, right? But if this is false, then you are definitely offline. It's kind of my long way of getting there, right? So when this is false, you're definitely offline. So this means you do not have a connection, you don't have a connection to the internet. So this is something that we can use. Like if we're offline, don't even try. Like we can say if offline, if is online equals false, or just bang, return, so if we're offline, we're doing a retry, let's wait an hour, right? Let's wait 60 times 1,000 milliseconds, right? It's kind of a wacky thing, right? Because if I go online in 1 second, then this request will wait for an hour to finish, but that's fine. So now, let's also give let's see, debug. User is offline. No network connection detected. Waiting an hour to try again. I mean, maybe we want to do something like, if we don't have a network connection, then like double this or something, right? I don't know. But for whatever, whatever, for these purposes, let's just do this. Okay, I'm offline, so there's no way that it's going to load the new version of my service worker. Let's see. And now it's all mad. Not loading the service worker at all, because developing service workers is a pain. Okay, cool. Now it's not kicking in. It's still not kicking in. Let's do the debug trick. Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, cool. So now it's executing with retry. It's going to do that back off and everything. Well, that succeeded. Let's kick it off again. All right, cool. Now let's go offline in the middle. No network connection detected, waiting an hour to try again, right? So now we're just waiting. The request is still pending. Not sure when it'll time out, quite frankly. I'm assuming it might time out at some point. So this is in that weird area where we know we're offline, so there's no point in sending the request. So like I said, instead of waiting an hour, I could just like double this or something like that. Just make a really conservative back off or something. But there's also a UX component to this, right? There is the fact that like you tried to make a request and you're offline. So what are you doing making requests at all? And more importantly, the user needs to know. The user might not even know that they're offline or that we can't connect. And so the next level to this, the next step to all of this is to actually inform the user, or at least trigger an event or something. So let's go back to the basics of. That's interesting. That was a very short hour. I'm going to go ahead and say that's 60 seconds because, yes, of course it is. All right, so 60 times 60 would be 60 minutes. There we go. Anyway. Yeah, so let's go and... okay, so go back to the service worker. So again, we're in a service worker, which is actually a completely different thread from the UI. So I can't just do something like window.writeLine or whatever, right? Like I can't interact with the window or the UI thread directly. So the way that you interact with the thread is, I don't know it off the top of my head. I know that there is a way to do it. I don't know what it is. I think you do push events. So there's a couple of different APIs here, right? So let's see, there's notifications. I think that's incoming notifications. Control the display of system notifications. These are outside the top level and therefore can be displayed when the user switch tabs and move to a different app. Okay, yeah, I think these are the kind of things that you get, like when you have Facebook notifications that pop up, on your right-hand side or whatever. That's not what I want. I mean, maybe it is, but it's not what I want. Channel messaging, I think, is also something I don't want. This allows two separate scripts running in different browsing contexts attached to the same document to communicate directly. So this is a different thing. This is more when you're using web workers and or service workers. I think service workers are a type of web worker. I might have that backwards, but web workers and service workers are very related at the very least. So these allow basically web workers to communicate with each other. I don't want that. I want to communicate back to the frame. So the next one I want is the push API, I believe. No, this is push API to receive messages from the server. So what do I want? I want something like window publish message or something. I don't know. I don't remember what it's called, but you're publishing a message is what you want to do. So let's say service worker publish message. post message. Yep, there we go. Cool. So this is how you can communicate with the main thread. So let's search for post message. Okay. You need to create a new message channel. Is that what that was over here? Let's see. Message channel. Service worker API message channel. How come I don't see any? Oh, was it? Is it the message? Oh, okay. Oh, cool. This was it. All right. So this is the channel messaging API. So you can communicate with the iframes. Cool, cool, cool. Okay, so this is how you establish a connection between the screen and the service workers. Oh, excuse me. Let me take a sip of my coffee. Never get enough sleep. I don't know about you. Okay, so you basically create a new channel, get a port on that channel. Right, so now the iframe, this you're going to want to on message. Yeah. So you got to handle the message on the channel, right? So this is the subscriber to subscribe to messages that are sent on the channel. So this is what I'm in my UI. I'm going to listen to this, and then I'm going to in my service worker. I'm going to post message, right? So how do we do it with a service worker? Okay, new message channel, port 1 on message. This is port 2. Okay, so the new message channel. Right, so this assumes that the service worker is creating its port first, and then the UI is going to be on port 2, I guess. Not really sure where port 1 and port 2 come from. I assume the API does that for you. Then, where's the UI? Well, this is showing the other way. This is the UI is sending a message to the service worker. I want the other way around, and I don't want to stumble through this. So let me client.post message transfer. Yeah, so we've got 2 ports here. How do you know? There's messaging between tabs. Let's try that. Let's see what that is. Service. Okay, so you got controller post message. Yeah. Okay, cool. So what is the controller? I have no idea. This is just some random dude. I don't even know when this is from. 2018. Well, what does MDN have to say about controller? Nothing here. Yeah, message Chanel. It smells very good. Let's see. There we go. Okay, cool. Port 1, port 2. That's interesting. Returns a message channel with 2 message port objects. Which is 1 and which is 2? How do you know which is 1 and which is 2? Well, let's just assume that the first one that requested is 1 and the second one is 2, I'm assuming. Okay, so I want to do that as soon as I boot up. I want to create a new channel, right? Oh, I don't need to create a channel. I have that controller. And I can listen for messages. So this is 2 ways, right? This is state to service worker. Wait, what? Navigator service worker controller. Is that something I can access in the browser? Let's see. Navigator service worker. It is. Oops. Message. Post message. Okay. listener message. Yeah, okay. So it's listening to the messages. Client.post message. What's the client? Send tab state. Send tab state. Who's saying that? I don't like that I'm using some random guy's blog post to figure this out. I'd rather see this on MDN. But MDN is not a service worker specific. All right, so let's say post message service worker, which I think is what I Googled before to get to that guy's blog post. Service worker post message sample. Is this the one that we were on before? No, this is sending from the UI to the service worker. I want the other way around. Yeah. Okay, one way to send a, cool, thank you, Stack Overflow, Manu. One way to send a response from the worker back to the controlled application is this demo and done the following way. I haven't actually tested this yet. Cool. Well, I'll test it right now. Okay, again with the port 1. Transferring port 2 to the service worker. This is it. So this is in the main page. Post message. Event. Ports. Interesting. Post message. This seems very, I don't like it. It seems wrong. It seems wrong that the service worker is listening for a message in order to post a message back. This doesn't make any sense. I don't like that. What does JB Mulliker have to say about this? Jasper Mulliker. All right, send a pay. Nope, I don't want that. Yes, broadcast to all clients known to the service worker. Yes. Cool. This.clients. What the heck is a client? Well, let's go ahead and find out. Let's say when we load up this.clients. What is this? Assuming it's the service worker. Let me set a debug point in my existing code to see what that means. Okay, so we gotta go back online here. There we go. Let me go to my, where's my service worker? There it is. Oops, I'm gonna go to my service. Yeah, cool. So let's go somewhere. Right here, every Ajax request. Boom, cool. So now what is this clients? Yeah. Why don't we do it up here? Let's refresh the page. See if this loads. Let's do the debug trick to make it load. There we go, cool. All right, do we have this.clients? We do, okay, cool. This.clients, interesting. So that jives. This.clients.match all, then clients for each post message, hello from the other side. Cool, let's just go ahead and do that. We don't have any clients registered, I don't think. Content is cached, yeah. Cool. Okay, let's do, so we do have this.clients here. Let's try that out and see what happens. Hello from the other side. Okay, So nobody's listening, so that makes sense. Let's. We didn't have access. Okay, let's do. Let's say publish message. Send a message. Clients. There we go. And we'll just do that. Cool. I assume that post message can take an object. I'll just go ahead and make that assumption. Okay, so now, just to test this out, when we add the event listener, let's do fetch with retry. Let's just do this. Every time we fetch with retry, publish message, retrying. Okay, let's see what happens there. Oh, well, we need to go to our application and actually listen to this. So let's go to my, what the heck, let's do index.tsx. And let us say what? How do we listen to it? In the page, add event listener message. Simple enough. Cool. Just log that to the console. Cool. I will do that. There we go. Awesome. Look at that. Data. It's got data and everything. Payload. Man, it's got a lot of data. Type message. Not quite sure those are my messages. How do I know? How do I know? How do I know? Well, what does it say? This is the event. Event. How do I? We're back here now. This is apparently the canonical example. Event.data. Yeah, okay, so that's interesting. Event.data source. Oh, okay. So these Windows events are the DevTools detector. All right, so that makes sense. These are all DevTools detector events, apparently. Okay. Let's log just the data. Cool. All right, there's the DevTools. Now let's trigger. No. Of course, my script is not loading now. And let's try the debug trick. Cool. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so I think these are, wait, hold on, what message did I post? I posted publish message retrying. Why do I not see retrying? Because it's not working. Oh, that didn't quite work. So how do I get this to work? Anybody in the chat have any ideas? Have you done this at all? We are in brand new territory for me. All right. Window add event listener. So I'm listening to all the messages and I'm getting the event data. So this is working. Let's do this. Let's make this async and do some cool stuff in here. Let's break this. Let's break this down and do some debugging. Let's get the clients. and then console.debug found clients.length. Clients, and maybe just throw them out there on the console there so we can look at them. Client is not defined, of course. Client. Oh, yeah, clients. Of course, client is not defined because, yes, it's not. Cool. Okay, window client. All right, so that's, I assume, my window. Yeah, diag, that's the window. Okay. So that's working. So why isn't it working? So publish for each post message. Window listen to post message. I feel like my message handler is not working here. Okay, post message. So how do I listen to a post message? On message, which is what I have received. Well, someone's not on message. Seems like my page is not on message. All right, well, what if I do this raw HTML, raw JavaScript up in my head, forget about React and TypeScript and all that stuff. Let's just do it up here. What happens there? Nothing. Oh, hello, true. What? No, that's the dev. Okay. I get a sneaking sensation that my service worker did not refresh. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Found one clients. Again, I'm looking for, let's make this a little more obvious. Post message. Yeah, it's finding the clients and it's sending it. Huh. Found 0 clients. Okay, that's interesting. So that's the difference. That is very interesting. Why do I not have any clients there? What if I do a new message channel? Ah, man. Okay, look, I'm going to start all the way over, close everything to the right. I'm going to Google again, start from scratch. All right, service worker post message to window. That's what I want to do, right? All right, look at this guy. 2015, it's a while ago, but hopefully, okay. In order to message a service worker, it's not what I want to do. Getting replies from the service worker. I don't want to get a reply. I want the service worker to initiate the conversation, but whatever. Let's see. On the service worker side, it's not that fun. So we've got this event port, but this is responding to an event. I don't want to respond. Broadcasting from a service worker to every client. Okay. This one is straightforward, but it's also different from the two situations we talked about. Quite honestly, very verbose. Cool. There's the exact code that I have done. What do I have to send a data object? I don't know. Navigator service worker. Okay, how about this? In your web page. All right. Yep. Okay. So rather than listening to window at event listener, I want to do service worker at event listener. Cool. All right. Oh, that worked. Cool. One second, I will be right back. All right, I am sorry about that. That was the mechanic calling. Okay, so I haven't done anything since I went on pause. But what we did see for 1 second, at least I saw it, for 1 second was it did work, but now again it looks like my service worker is not actually listening to any requests. Man. Let's refresh the page, loaded service worker, but you didn't actually load the service worker because it's not doing anything. Cool. There we go. All right. Those are the messages we're looking for. Post message, retrying, post message. All right, cool. So now we've got two-way, well, we've got one-way at least. Judging by those blog posts, the two-way should be fine. But we're listening to subscriptions. Okay, so what did I ended up having? Okay, so I had to use navigator.serviceWorker instead of window.addEventListener. So I am listening to the window or the message event, but it has to be on the service worker, not on the window. So let's delete this. Let's move this back into strongly typed TypeScript land because that's where I live. I'll just go ahead and put it up here for now. If navigator in navigator, let's say service worker in navigator. There we go. Wrap that in that nice, comfy service worker blanket. Okay. Cool. Still works. Refresh. I mean, assume it reloaded. I don't know. Can never know. But okay, cool. So there's our handler. We're getting that data. So now I can listen to this event, right? So now I can go and I can publish. And this thing can do a couple things. It can, first of all, listen for, let's write something that's, let's say function listen for offline. So this, I'll self-register this function. This is going to listen to navigator dot, I don't know if it's is online or whatever. Let's see. I think it's an event actually. Oops, I'm in my other page here. Let's say offline browser offline event. Online and offline events is what we're going to listen to. There's the API. That's a Boolean, not an event. And then there are events here. Here we go. Add event listener to the window document or document.body. So let's do this. Add event online or offline. So we will do exactly this. Update offline status. Cool. And we will call publish method what was it? Navigator.online. Publish message. Let's see. Type equals online change. Online. Let's say online status. Now, I mean, I'm basically just wrapping the window event, so my application could just as easily listen for these guys. But just for right now, I'm just kind of doing this. Ultimately, I think we're going to end up, let's just pull this up here. Ultimately, I think we're going to end up calling this or something like it, some publish method online status for these retry attempts, right? So basically, I'm wrapping this because this is the browser functionality, right? So this will tell me when the browser knows whether it's online or offline mode, meaning we have a network connection or we don't have a network connection. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's that kind of gray area where I have a really flaky connection, or I have a connection, but it's only to my LAN. I don't have a connection to the internet. So I have a different definition of online or offline, which goes beyond just whether or not the browser thinks it's online or offline. We'll start implementing it by just saying online or offline. And I happen to hate this capital L here, so I'm going to change that. And then I'm going to go back to my application. I'm going to listen to online status. So I'm going to look at this, the event.data.type equals, what was it? Online status. So if we have the online status, then let's just console log for right now. Oh, jeez. Console.log. Online status is event.data.online. Actually, I like to say is online. There we go. Cool. So we'll log that out. So now when we go back to my application, window is not defined. Where is window? Window is here. Yeah. Let's see. Hopefully we can get access to that. All right, let's see what happens if we go offline. Yeah, oh, I just realized we don't have window. We don't have window in the service worker, I don't think, because it's not in the window. So let's say service worker online. Was that online? Yeah, online event. No, that's what I want. Service worker online offline event. Let's see, online offline events, not service work, service worker. Oh, here, it's a recipe. Maybe this is exactly what we were looking for. Sorry, I'm just looking at this to see for registering the code. I assume since it's in the window, then this is in their jQuery code. I was just kind of looking to see if anybody had registered it in service worker. Okay, so let's look at this. Offline recipes for service workers. Let's see, service worker API, offline status. Okay, the offline status recipe. Let's go over here. This is cool. I have not seen this before. Basic recipe is their code. Well, what am I looking at here? Demo. Demo. Okay, where's the code for this demo? Where's the code for this demo? I'm not too sure about these. Not too sure about these recipes here. Where's app? Control P app JS. All right. Service worker get registration unregistered. I don't know. You're now safe to go offline. I don't know what's going on here. Where's the code for this? It's kind of weird. What is this? Never been to this page before. Why are we talking about things? I want to see code. Let's go back here. Add event listener. There's the fetch. Already did that. Was that activate? That's activating the service worker. controller change. We're back in the UI here with this one. So this is just talking about whether the service worker is ready to go offline, whether it's cached everything. So that's useful, but not for our, here we go, best practices for detecting offline state in our service worker. Okay. Navigator.online. Request mode. Well, let's change our logic here. I don't know what I want to Google here. So if we add event listener to service worker offline, let's try. No, let's skip that one. See, this is the problem, is that most of the time you're using service workers to have an offline experience, and so the word offline shows up everywhere. I want to see the offline event in the service worker. Okay. This is the same. This is the same code that we just saw. Okay, service, let me go back to MDN. Let's say service worker, MDN. Look at these APIs. So navigator, notification events, window client. Why can't I just add an event listener? Yeah, okay. Well, I think it is late enough. We've been going for a little over 2 hours, 4 hours, including my lunch break. So I'm going to drop now because we got a solid four-hour session here. I'm going to stop now because we've made some pretty good progress here. So I'm actually going to go and implement the UI portion of this because even if I were able to get this going and the service worker was publishing to the UI a message that said, hey, you're offline, I don't have the user experience actually implemented in the UI to handle that yet. So I'm going to drop off now, and then I'll pick it back up in a couple of days. So the next time I see you, we'll talk about how to actually wire all this up together. And in the meantime, I'll do this research offline, no pun intended. How to, or if we can, if the service listener can listen to the offline or online events. I think probably we'll just end up saying navigator.online, but that's fine. And then we'll wire this whole thing up to publish this online offline message to the UI, and it can respond accordingly. So thank you for signing in to my my very first streaming session. I had a great time. I hope that you did too. Walter999 followed me. Thank you very much. I'm up to what? You're the third follower, I think. You guys are the single digits. Thank you very much. I hope that this was valuable for you. This was educational for you. And I'd love to talk to you. So feel free next time to send me some chat messages, and we can chat it up. I don't yet have a streaming schedule set up just yet, a well-defined schedule. I'm thinking the next time I'll be online is probably later in the evening on Eastern time on Sunday, maybe? I don't know. It's Thanksgiving week, right? It's crazy over here. I'm going to shoot for Sunday night, so we'll see how that goes. So I'm thinking maybe like Sunday, Friday, I don't know. I'm going to get a schedule together just so it's a little more predictable. But anyway, for you folks who joined in live, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you next time. Oops, my outro is all messed up. Look at that.